Hello. Yeah. So myself, Priyansh Gupta. I'm with my co-authors for the research are Michael, Niklas, and Patrick. The title of the research paper is a Gaussian mixture model approach for characterizing play style for ice hockey players. The first question which usually comes after seeing the title is why playing style of the players matters a lot. We have seen like the scouting, player development, and understand like the playing strategies relies on understanding the player roles and what are the players who fits in those roles. However, the traditional matrices as of now do not cover the full pictures of the different playing roles and what are the players which can fit in those roles. So with this research, our idea is to present a data-driven approach for classifying the players uh, using the events data of the SHL for 5 seasons, which are from year 2019-20 to the last season, 2023-24. The key contribution with this research is like we have constructed detailed player skill vectors, which summarizes both offensive and defensive skills for both forwards and defenders. We have applied the Gaussian mixture models for soft clustering on the skill vectors for both the forwards and defenders. And at the end, we have interpreted and illustrated the playing style for SHL for the 5 seasons of the datasets. The approach for use in this research is first and foremost we acquire the data set for SHL for 5 seasons. We use SQL for faster querying and manipulation of data manipulation. Then we create a player vector for each vector. A player vector consists of both the defensive and the offensive skills for each of the players. Then we run a set of Gaussian mixture models and perform a model selection to get one best Gaussian mixture model out of the set. And at the end, we interpret the results which we get from the optimal Gaussian mixture model. To present a bit about the data set which we have used, the data sets consist of the 5 seasons, 5 SSL seasons, from the seasons 2019-20 to the season 2023-24. It consists a total of 1,820 games. There were a total of 1,072 different players and 6.8 million events. We focuses much more on the forwards and defenders in this research. The plot here represents a events distribution for the season 2019-20. We can see that the 60% of the data set just consists of 3 events, which are pass, loose puck recovery, and the pass reception. We have seen the similar trend in the other seasons data set as well. Yeah, now how the construction of player vectors happen. Uh, we have adopted the process of constructing the player vectors from an earlier research titled as Characterizing Play Style for Ice Hockey Players. A player vector consists 13 skills for defenders and 18 skills for forwards. A skill is consist of several actions. If I will go in detail about the skills for forwards, so these are the skills. The set of skills consists of both offensive and defensive skills, and each of these skills are consist of various actions at forwards or a player perform on the ice. Yeah. Similarly, these are the skills for defenders. It consists of it also consists for both offensive and defensive skills. Offensive skills such as power play, playmaking, power play scoring, shooting are there, and there are a lot of defensive skills. And each of these skills are consist of various actions which corresponding to such skills. The process of constructing the player vectors is simple. We just counted all the action for each of the skills. and we use the non-negative matrix factorization to get a single value for each of the skill. At the end, uh, we concatenate each of the, like, all the skills for all the values for each skill to get a vector of length 13 for defenders and a vector of length 18 for forwards. Okay, so Gaussian mixture model. To define what is a Gaussian mixture model, uh, to present it more informally, it is a soft clustering method. What it does, it lets each data point, which in our case will be the different players, to belongs to the multiple group at once. Like at the same time, the player maybe belongs to the different clusters or maybe performing different roles. To define it more technically, it is a probabilistic model which represents data as the several overlapping Gaussian distributions, and where each of the distribution corresponding to each a cluster. Okay, so in earlier research, the number of component was taken as the 5. And even in our research, we have chosen 5 as the number of component. But for the sanity check, we have performed we also have performed model selection with BIC. And in our case, the lowest average BIC score for both forwards and defenders is for the number of components is 10. However, the difference between the average BIC score between the number of components 5 and 10 is not that is like relatively small. So we went ahead with 5 as the number of points, number of components. However, in the future, we will be also exploring the clustering with 10 as the number of components. Okay, so this represents a 2D plot for the clustering using all seasons data set. The different colors represents the different, okay, the different colors represents different clusters. And the darker the points, each points are, the more it belongs to that particular cluster. We can see some like light blue and light green dots here. This means that those players or those points doesn't fully belongs to the like the corresponding clusters. They may be all lapping between those points to the different clusters as well. Yeah, I will just present the results for the thing. Okay, here are the two plots for average skill values for 10 forwards, which are closest to cluster centroid. The left plot represents the data yeah, the left plot is using the data set for all the seasons, and the right plot is using the data set just for one season, which is 2019 and 20. For other seasons, we have got the similar clusters, which are similar to the season for the season 2019-20. So we have not shown those plots here. Okay. Now to compare the different clusters between the season 2000, like for all season and the one season, we can see then the cluster F0 for all season is similar to the cluster F3 for the season 2019-20. These forwards have average skills in average values for all of the skills. However, they have strength in skills such as slot defense, offensive zone play, shootings, and shooting, puck moving, and some other skills as well. The players who belongs to these clusters are also listed on the slides. These are the two other similar clusters, which for the all season and for the season 2019-20. In these clusters, the forwards are good in slot defense, penalty killing, offensive zone play, power play playmaking, but they lacks the skills such as power play, slot engagement, power play scoring, and the slot engagement. Similarly, the cluster F3 similar to the cluster F1 for the season 1920. Here, the players have mostly uh, doesn't have values for most of the skills, but the skills they have strength in the skills such as slot defense, offensive zone play, puck moving, and shooting. These are the clusters which has more than average skills, or the players in these clusters excel in almost have values in almost all the skills. They excel in skating, heavy game, forward checking, cycling the puck. Okay, this is the cluster for the all seasons, which is not similar to any of the cluster for other seasons. In this cluster, the players have slightly low values for most of their skills. However, they have strength in slot defense, the skills such as slot defense, puck moving, offensive zone play, and the shooting. Similarly, this is the cluster, like the cluster F0 is not similar to the cluster for all seasons. The players in the cluster in 2019 and 20, like the cluster F0 in 2019-20, have more than average skill values for almost all the skills. However, they miss they lack the skills such as power play scorings and slot engagement and power play slot engagement. So, okay, to give an example of player who developed over the season, the player Ricard Heg was in the cluster F3, which has uh, average values for all the skills in the season 2019-20. However, for the season to 2020-21, he moved to the to the cluster which lacks the values in the skills such as power play, scoring, and slotting engagement. Uh, and in the next season, he has moved to the cluster which has above average values for all the skills. It may be like in the season 2021, he might be given some um, particular role to play in the team, and so this is what how we can see a player development over the seasons. Similarly, for the defenders, these are the plots. It's like the similar. The left side we have for all seasons. The right side we have for the season 2019 and 20. Okay. So to compare the clusters, the cluster D1 is similar to the cluster D2 for season 2019-20. These players have high skills in almost all the high values in almost all the skills. They excel in defensive skills such as physical play, uh, penalty killing, slot defense, staying at home. Okay, so these two cluster almost have zero values for all these skills. The players who belongs to these clusters are some junior players or some long time injured players which are there for the seasons. So for the cluster D3, which is similar to the side, and here the values for all the skills are very less, but they lack the skills such as power play, playmaking, power play scoring. It might be like these players have gotten less game time, and they never even they played very less time in the power play. Okay, okay. These are the clusters which has high values in almost all their skills. Uh, yeah, and these players excels in skills such as passing, skating, point producing, power play, playmaking, power play scoring. These are the defenders who even take part in the power play, and like we can even name them offensive defenders. Like they have high values for almost all the offensive skills as well. The cluster D0 is not doesn't have any similar cluster for the years. It has almost very less values for almost all the skills. And these are the players who have played very few games in SHL. Okay. Yeah, similarly, the cluster D4 is okay. Yeah, the cluster D4 was not similar to any of the cluster in for all seasons. The same cluster, okay, for the year 2023 and 24, this cluster is missing, and the cluster D2 is repeated twice, with one cluster having the less values for all the skills and one cluster having the more like almost high values for all the skills which has values for the in the D2. Again, to give an example of the player who have grown over the season or have, who was in the different clusters. The player Rasmussen was in mainly in the cluster D2 or similar to the cluster which are there for the D2 for the season 1920 and almost all other seasons. However, in the season 23-24, he's been into the cluster which has uh, more higher values for all the skills. He doesn't play the power play. That's why the values for uh, the skills which are related to the power play are very less for the same. To conclude the research, we have presented the data-driven approach to classify the playing style. We use the Gaussian mixture model for the soft clustering. Uh, in future, we will also be using the dataset from the other hockey leagues such as AHL, Hockey Allsvenskan, and we can even see compare the different trends between the leagues and over the season in these leagues as well. We will also perform the model selection for all seasons separately and maybe get the clusters for each season separately and see if there are any changes or it uncovers any new findings. Additionally, we will compare the fuzzy clustering presentation. It will give us an insight to about the strength and weaknesses of different approaches as well. That's it. I'm open. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that would be good to take into account here would be like the deployment of the player. Like if definitely would affect the clustering or the group that if the player plays like with the first line or if he's in a checking line or playing more defensive role. So I think that would be interesting to see if that affects the player's profile a lot. Like if he chases from season to season to different roles and deployment.
Yeah. So for that, we as of now, what we have considered like the already predefined position for forwards and defenders. So we have done the testing based on that only. So it might be interesting to see if a player moves from, let's say, defenders to forward for a few games, or maybe the opposite way. It might be interesting. Yeah. Any other suggestions or questions?
Thank you.
Yep.